by your own admission, you have been busy all your life, but you have had
Yeah.
paying work in very small spurts throughout your career. How do you feel about this? Looking back, how much of this outcome was directly influenced by your choices and how much was it by forces beyond your control?
Well, quite often it was because of forces beyond my control. In the sense, I just didn't get any interesting work for years. People didn't think me worthy of being cast. But in a way, it turned out to be quite good for me. Because it ended up with me doing television. That's the first kind of really paying job that I got. A television program in the very early days of Indian television called Idhar Udhar, which was in 1984. So yeah, it was a very unusual experience for me. I was always trained to be an actor. I'd done a fair amount of work on stage. And I somehow believed that I would be doing dramatic parts, and that's what one expects when one is young. You'll do the big parts, the drama, the seriously important big issues of life, etc. It turns out that I get a comedy. I was completely unprepared for it. I had no experience in it, and I had to learn on the job. And it was so exciting. I didn't know if I could do it, but the whole process was a great challenge and absolutely wonderful fun. We were all learning on the job. That was one of the first sitcoms that was being made at the time. And incidentally, it's so much more progressive than around today. Also somewhat witty in those days. So it was a very wonderful introduction for me into comedy and into acting in a completely different context. So I really, really learned a lot, and I got a lot of pleasure out of it. In fact, I'm convinced that comedy saved me from becoming a really boring, stodgy actor, which I think I would have become had I been left to my own devices. And in any case, those days when I was starting out, I'm talking about early 80s, those days the kind of parts written for women were either, the kind of parts that Shabana and Sneeta and people like that played, the big dramatic parts. And I imagine that that's the kind of work I would do if I ever got work. But I didn't get that kind of work, and I got Idhar Udhar. So I really feel that Idhar Udhar saved me in many, many ways. It changed my attitude towards my work and towards life also. So I was very lucky. I feel that in the long run, the way my career, or so-called career, panned out was quite extraordinary for me.
Great, superb. My next question would be, invariably, unlike most actors, the persona around you has always been political and intellectual, far more intense than even your better half. Is this because you are inherently a more political person than creative?
That's a tough distinction to make. I feel everything is political. Art is always political. And what we are trying to do is to create some kind of art. However odd it may seem to be to consider the kind of stuff we do in television art. But yes, it is, in a way. And it's a message that goes out to very many people. And it's a message that conveys many of the preoccupations that a society or a government in any country has. So definitely, I mean, Idhar Udhar, Tara, Filmi Chakkar, these were the first few things that I did professionally. And all of them were trying to explore situations, characters that were quite different from what had been seen in Hindi movies. Women were actually taking charge of their lives. In Tara, the story was for women without necessarily having male support, leading lives, making choices, doing things that were considered shocking or unacceptable. In Idhar Udhar, we were two young girls living with another man. a man who we were neither romantically involved with, nor were we related to. It was not a brother or a cousin or something like that. It was just a stranger, a paying guest who we were living with. And there was no sense of awe and how can you do that? And दो अकेली लड़कियां, how can that be? बगैर शादी के किसी और आदमी के साथ रहे, हाय हाय. There was none of that. And then in the 90s and early 2000s really came that horrible phase of the Saas Bahus with all their regressive ideas and all the kind of stuff that we had spent years in our country trying to dump.
Yeah.
You know, घूंघट निकालो और कपड़े समादम पहनो और you know, इसके पैर छुओ और संस्कृति को पालो और परंपरा को संभालो and all that kind of patriarchal shit that we had been fighting against all my youth, all the women I knew, all the women in my family. They were all women who had made their own lives, who had stood up for their own desires and made choices without parental or family approval necessarily. So this, I could see, was an attempt to push us back into a kind of a regressive social space. So, of course, it's political. If you check who came into power in government at that early time, you know, in the late 90s into the early 2000s, if you go back and check that out, I mean, you can see what the intention is to create this parampara-ridden society all over again, where caste is important, where communal relationships are, sort of looked down upon. Intercommunal contact is considered unacceptable. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that had no place in the 21st century. And look at where we are now. We are even worse.
Yeah.
So how can you not be a political person if you are making something that is being consumed by so many millions in a country? How is that act not a political act? What choice do you have? How can you say, I will only be an artist? So I do feel that all art is political, and that's our job. The job of art is to disturb society, to make you think, to question. Of course, we are not doing that now. That's another story. In fact, we are being forced now, particularly with the OTT world coming into our lives. Suddenly, we are really being looked at very carefully. People are self-censoring in a way that I did not believe possible. Sometimes I wonder, am I in Islamic Iran or am I in modern India? Where am I? What kind of a society are we creating? So, I mean, this is really, really scary stuff that's happening around us. And if we don't talk about it, if we don't speak up against it, then we are not doing our job, I feel.
True. Very true, ma'am. Ma'am, has your to-the-point persona and no-nonsense approach ever intimidated those around you?
I guess it has. Outspoken women are not very appreciated in India, probably all over the world, but definitely in our country. On the other hand, nobody who's close to me has been intimidated. People I've worked with have not been intimidated. So I suppose it depends upon the person who is interacting with me. If that person is easy to intimidate, then I suppose he or she gets intimidated. Look, not my job to worry about them.
True. Okay, ma'am. Comedy can be a serious business. Most of your easily referred work has been fallen into that genre when it comes to film and TV. Does being funny extract the veritable pound of flesh from an actor? Does it limit your prospects and does it also limit your perception as a versatile actor?
I don't think of myself as a comic actor. And fortunately, I happen to be working at a time when those strict definitions and stereotypical slots are not being enforced. I mean, there was a time, of course, when if you wanted to be an actor, you had to sort of decide, do I want to do hero-heroine or do I want to do character role? Do I want to do villain? Do I want to do comedy? Comedian? So you had to sort of limit yourself almost per force. What a pity, because a guy like Mahmood was such a wonderful actor and probably extremely skillful, but he never got a chance to do anything else. I have seen Amrish Puri on stage. He's quite different from the kind of stuff he had to do. This Mr. Dong and Dang and stuff that he had to do, poor fellow. I mean, this is the क्या कहते हैं जो फिल्म मेकर्स हैं या टीवी डायरेक्टर्स हैं, राइटर्स हैं, उनके इरादों में कंगाली है. वो नहीं समझ पाते कि किस तरह से how to write parts which reflect people and not categories. You know, you can't have good drama or good fiction if you put people into little slots like this. So it's the result of lazy writing, I think, more than anything else. We've had very, very poor writers.
Yeah.
You know, people who just took together some rubbish and passed it off as a script. That's why films took like 4 and 5 years to make, because they were writing on the trot while they were, shooting. I remember getting scenes on the day of the shoot. There was no sign of a script before the shoot. So this is just bad planning and bad management. So fortunately, we have gotten out of that state now. We are able to think and we are able to write better. I think our writers today are a significant improvement on what we had when I started. And the kind of films my poor husband did, my heart breaks to think of the pain he must have suffered on those. It's badly written, badly directed, badly put together stuff. But that was all that was available.
Yeah.
Out of an actor's life. So you just selected from whatever you could. Fortunately, those categories are certainly much less fixed.
Yeah.
And people write parts for human beings. Human beings can be angry and funny and emotional and everything. I don't have to be one or the other.
Okay. Your work in Sarabhai versus Sarabhai has become part of pop culture, so much so that decades after its original run, it's still one of the most followed content on the internet today. How do you feel about this success that's managed to sustain for posterity?
It was a good product, as simple as that. Well written, well produced, well directed, very well acted. So it was just one of those things that fell into place beautifully. But I would say the bulk of the श्रेय जो जाता है ना, मतलब the important credit goes to the writer. It was Atish Kapadia and his view of the world that has stood the test of time.
Yes,
of course we all contributed, no doubt about it. But the writing was what was special. For once, it was witty. For once, we had an Indian comedy that was actually witty. It was such a relief to go onto a set and do a scene which was well written. We didn't have to do any repair work. You didn't have to be in line. You just went and did what Hatish had written. It was fantastic. It was literally a one-off experience. And we were definitely ahead of our times. Because when we first came on, which is in 2004 or 5 or something like that.
Yes.
And at that time, we were on this thing called Star 1, which was only in the 4 metros.
Star 1, yes.
Yes. And our TRP was 0.69, not even 1. Fortunately, in those days, TRPs didn't matter all that much. But that's it. And we did just about 60 some odd episodes. And then we were pulled off because nobody was watching. I mean, my own family didn't watch. I had friends and family who would watch most of what was happening on television, but they didn't find Sarabhai something that they could connect to. It was much later when Sarabhai became a repeat show, when it was run practically every day, and then finally when it went online.
Yeah.
That is when suddenly,
Yeah, season 2. Yeah.
we discovered our audience.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly there was a younger Indian audience that was able to consume this kind of humor, that was interested in seeing people of this kind, that did not want to be spoon-fed. So it's a new audience that we found, thank heavens, probably much younger than what we had earlier. And that's why Sarabhai has become what it has. And I have to say, it's very gratifying when I'm told that, हमारा lockdown आप लोगों की वजह से अच्छा बीता. Whenever I've been unhappy, I've managed to put on Sarabhai and managed to save myself from depression. Somebody said in 2008, when I lost my job and I had no work for a long time, I found that I could survive that horrible time only because there was Sarabhai. I mean, of course not, it's only because, but Sarabhai did contribute in its own way to creating a mood of happiness, which is special. It is really wonderful to hear that.
My next question would be, when family, friends and peers ask questions like "Bade hoke kya banoge" to kids, parents usually are most interested in the answers. When the same questions were posed to Imad and Vivan, what did you want them to say?
I had very little to do with it. Rightly so, because it was their life that they were thinking about. I had no business in it. I mean, if they asked me for advice or for opinions, I certainly gave it to them. But it's not possible to run your kids' lives, You may have seen a little more of life before you feel you have all the answers, and you want to prevent your children from seeing the unhappy side of life. But I say to you, how then would you grow up if you don't face life with all its complexity, good, bad, different, horrible, boring, everything. All of life has to be experienced and faced, and you've got to grow out of that. I don't understand parents who say, I want to give my child everything that I did not have. I want to say to those parents, are you crazy? You idiots. You became what you became because you didn't have.
Yeah, exactly.
That gave you the desire, the fire, the passion to do what you wanted to do, to find your way in life. How else would you have done it? If mommy and daddy had provided everything for you, how the hell could you have grown? Why are you preventing your children from having that same experience? I mean, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, frankly. But I hear it all the time. I want to give my child everything that I did not get. Well, then that poor child turns out to be a very confused and a very depressed individual very often. Because that child doesn't know how to go about life, how to deal with shit that comes your way, and it will come your way. Nobody can prevent that from happening. So I don't think that that's my job as a parent. And my children, fortunately, didn't expect me to do that for them. And people, all three of them, Hiba, Ibad and Divan, all three of them have been people with minds of their own and interests of their own, desires of their own, and they've led their lives according to that. I don't necessarily approve of everything they do, and they don't approve of everything I do. So we are equal.
Okay, my next question is a lot of women actors maintain that modern Indian movies have made an honest effort to create better content with female characters. Do you agree with this opinion?
Yeah, well, women seem to be getting better parts today than ever before. So, yep, it carries, it reflects what we are seeing in society around us. Women today are doing much more than they ever did before. And being and making their own way through life in pretty hard conditions. We are still dealing with terrible patriarchy in our country, definitely. And we are still dealing with lack of opportunity. But I'm amazed by the kind of gumption that young girls today show. I mean, in my profession, the girls from all over the country who are living in Mumbai, in tiny homes, supporting themselves, facing everything that a woman goes through in a big city, from the trouble of travel to the kind of experiences that you have at work and all the depression of relationships and difficulties of fitting in, of managing work as well as home, all these kind of issues. I'm so proud of the way young women deal with these things. When I came to the NSD, I had NSD, the National School of Drama, where I trained. I had a home to come to and a family that would support me. I didn't have to start paying my bills from day one. But there were so many other girls who came from NSD along with me. Dina Gupta.
Yeah.
She had just come a few months before I did. She had a completely different experience from what I did. I was safe. Nina was not. Nina had to fight. And Nina had to make her own place in the world. And, hats off to her for having done that. I have really a huge amount of respect for your women and how they manage their lives today. So I'm very hopeful that the future does look bright for at least some of the girls I know.
Okay.
But of course, we are just a small microcosm. There's a huge culture around us. And there's so many women who are still struggling with basics. The right to get an education, the right to get a decent life, to have some kind of say in the family. The right to decide how many children to have. Women in this country are really not treated well, I have to say. So much for our 3,000-year-old Sanskriti. If we can't even give half our public a decent life. Shame on us.
Yes. Okay. You have always been an advocate and benefactor of theatre. Today, with movie theatres facing an uncertain future, with the advent of OTT and a whole new world of creative engagement, where do you see the future of the traditional theatre format? Can it continue to be the crucible where real acting and storytelling talent can be forged?
Well, the pandemic has really shaken up our lives big time, particularly in the theatre. The kind of theatre I do, which is not commercial theatre, which is not the kind of a crowd-pleasing theatre that Marathi commercial theatre or Bengali commercial theatre does. So this is a huge change, a time of huge change for us. I think we are not where we are going. I hope and pray that this will not lead to the shutting down of live performance venues. But don't forget, we are still the lucky ones. What about traditional performers all over the country? And there's millions of that.
Right.
Those are the people who are really, really in trouble. And I have no idea how they're going to find livelihoods at this very, very unfortunate juncture of our lives. But I think the live experience is still precious. And maybe this enforced lockdown and this the fact that we've had to spend 2 years practically away from each other, away from human contact. I think that will make us want that human contact again. And the contact in the theatre between the audience and the performer, between the audience members themselves, between the performers themselves. That is irreplaceable, yaar. No other format, no other recorded format can give you that experience. And that's what, when Prithvi reopened in November last year, we did, when we did our shows there, and that was the experience of every theatre company that performed there in Prithvi in those days, was that the audience was dying to come back into the theatre. And when we started, I remember the first day when the first performance took place, and somebody came on stage from Prithvi and said, "Welcome back to Prithvi." The entire audience erupted in applause. I can't tell you how heartwarming that was. Being in that situation, being so deeply wanted. I'm really feeling emotional even when I'm talking about it.
Yeah, ma'am.
Because it was just incredible. And I do feel that human beings have not lost that desire to connect. we haven't yet become a society which wants to lock itself up in a room and look at a screen. So, inshallah,
Yeah.
there will be a future for us.
Yes, sure. Okay. In one of your interviews, ma'am, you had said about your courtship with Mr. Shah that one day we were not even friends and the next day we were going out together. So what changed all of a sudden between the two of you? Like, looking back, do you feel the ice could have been breaking in a different way?
Yeah, I guess so. We were getting to know each other a little bit. And I can't say that we were friends. We were working together in a place. So we had contact and we were getting to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess at some point we realized that we like each other enough to spend more time with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it happened. And fortunately, good for us, it lasted a good 40 plus years.
So what attracted you to Mr. Shah? Was it his acting or his personality that cast a spell on you?
That's a pointless question because it's a mix of everything, isn't it?
Yes.
How can you tell? You're married since you have 2 kids, I presume.
Mm-hmm.
So what can you point? What is it that actually went? No, you can't. It's a mix of everything. And it's an entirely lottery.
Mm-hmm.
We just got lucky.
We have also heard about your restaurant story where you guys had just 400 rupees and then you, after ordering the food, you had to calculate the bill. One would assume after that incident there must not been a similar situation in your life together. But have there been any other instances that match up to this unforgettable memory?
Let us say money has not ever played a huge role in our lives after that.
Mm-hmm.
Either having too little of it or too much of it. Like Goldilocks, we found a situation that was just right for us. Fortunately, Nasir made enough money for both of us to survive when I was not able to contribute very much financially to the family. But we don't have very expensive tastes. We don't need a huge amount of money. Our kids are also us. We might do what we want to do, see what we want to see, travel as much as we want to travel, and also be useful to others. I think that really finally is what money can do for you. It can give you the confidence to be to others. As somebody put it very beautifully, that the process of life is to grow from dependence, not to independence, but from dependence to dependability. And luckily for us, our finances give us the opportunity to be dependable for our family and for the people who work for us and whoever. So yes, it's been wonderful. The money didn't have to mean too much. I often wonder what it would be like to be a really, really poor person. And worse, what would it like to be a really, really rich person? I mean, what does Bill Gates do with his money that I can't do? Apart from, sort of buying a yacht or something. But if I don't want that damn yacht, how the hell does it matter? I mean, if my entire life is going to be spent calculating money, I think that would be a waste of a life. I'm so relieved that I don't have to think money all the time. Not how to earn it, not how to invest it. Damn. Whatever little I have, I find hard enough to manage that damn investment.
Yeah.
I would hate to have to worry about stock prices every morning. To me, that would be a fate worse than death. So I'm very happy where I am. I'm sorry, I know I'm speaking to Economic Times. That's not what you want to say.
Okay. Your marriage... Yeah.
That's my belief. Okay. If only we could have enough, not be greedy or impoverished, it would be wonderful.
Yes. Your marriage was a very personal affair with only families and close ones, as you both considered marriage as something very personal. I have read in your interviews you had said once. So will you prefer the same for your kids too?
Oh yes, we had a fantastic marriage.
Yeah.
I think I'm probably one of the few weddings that I have attended where the Dulha and Dulhan have had fun. Our wedding. We had a ball. We went to the beach and we swam in the sea and we drank wine and had a great meal.
Wow.
And with our friends. It was a party. So, yeah, and we didn't have to do any of the rituals and we didn't have to do any outgoing and dhona and nothing. I mean, when I left home from the house, from my flat, my mom's flat, and drove off into the sunset. It was fantastic because we were all singing Bidai songs together. We had just done a day in which we had a whole lot of Bidai songs. So a lot of us singing Bidai songs together, Nasir and me included. So it was a great fun marriage. And of course I'd want that for my kids. But my children seem to be showing no signs of marriage.
I'm sure they will start showing the signs too soon.
Well, I hope they know what they're getting into. That's all I can say.
You have your mother's eyes, grace and flair for acting. Flashes of her talent are visible in you and even your sister Supriya. How do you react to this compliments and comparisons? Do you consider your mother's vocation a key influence on your own choices of a career?
Of course. I grew up hearing stories about my mother traveling all over the country, performing in different places, in two very different kinds of audiences. She traveled all around India during the Bengal famine, for example, performing to village audiences on the back of a truck. And she also performed in fancy theatres in Bombay and Delhi and everywhere. And she lived a life that gave her great joy and great satisfaction. She lived a life which was constantly experimental. She was trying to push the envelope as a theatre actress and director. She wrote and directed her own stuff. She was an original. I'm afraid Supriya and I are not quite as bold and as initiative as Ma was. Don't forget, she was doing it at a time when we were not even allowed to study, don't have careers. She and her older sister were both engaged when they were 13 and 14 to be married off quickly. But they both fought. They both made their own choices and then lived their own lives and contributed a great deal to the world. So these are the women I grew up around. And they had a huge impact on me and on Supriya, of course. So both of us are totally blessed, and we consider ourselves blessed that we had Ma as our mother. And definitely she's been an inspiration. I can't say that I agreed with all her ideas about acting, but she then belonged to a totally different generation. And but I know that she worked very hard. I saw that always. Because when I was very young, she used to act in the theatre mainly. And working in the theatre is quite different from working in a film where you walk onto the set and say, "Mera room kahan hai, mere costume kahan hai," and all that. Theatre doesn't operate like that. You actually have to do everything. And that's what the great pleasure of theatre is. It's not professional in that sense. So I sat with her, and it has always proved to me a very useful lesson that whatever you get and whatever you want to get, you have to work very hard to do. But I have to say there is one disadvantage that because I saw the integrity of performance in the theatre as well as in film. I grew up backstage, as I've always said, and hung around on film sets a lot also. So I missed the magic of this world. I can't say I ever film and theatre impacted me in the way it impacts somebody who doesn't see it from backstage. When you see it from the outside, from the audience, the glamour of it, the miraculous appearing and disappearing of sets and the costumes and the buying into this alternative reality theater and film produce. We never could do that because we saw what went into making that alternative reality. So I do think that maybe I missed out on that, but I'm not sure.
My last question would be, the thought of death doesn't scare me, but the possibility of becoming an invalid does. This was stated by Mr. Shah in an interview. How far do you agree or disagree with this view? Have you ever faced similar thoughts? As aging is a natural process, so should be one wary of it or not be too bothered?
Oh, well, the only thing we can know for certain is the fact that we are going to die. What do we make about it? Why would one go on living over and over again, on and on and on? I mean, only if you are afraid of something like heaven, or something like hell, or you're looking forward to something like heaven, then death becomes an issue. Completely non-religious atmosphere. I have no real concept of religion. And as for the rituals around, did the things that everyone did. I mean, Ganpati ho raha hai kisi ke ghar pe, kahin Diwali ho rahi hai, kahin Eid manai ja rahi hai, and so on and so forth. And it was fun. It's the fun and the food and the friends and the getting together and the dressing up. That's what mattered to me.
Yeah.
But what was behind it? I never bought into caste. I have never ever had to make a choice this kind. Can I do something or can't I do something because my religion allows or forbids? I've been brought up to believe that choice is mine to make. I must exercise intelligence and compassion while making that choice. The responsibility is mine, not a priest or a god or a book that can tell me how to lead my life. I need to make up my mind. I need to use my intelligence because that's what's really the one key that I have which makes me special. My intelligence, my ability to discern between things. Vivek buddhi, जिसे हम हिंदुस्तानी में कहते हैं. ये विवेक बुद्धि इंसानी क्या कहते हैं? We are probably the only species that has been granted this vivek buddhi. Why would I hand it over to somebody else? I don't want anyone to tell me how to do it. I want the people I live with to be the people who will make me take certain choices. There's benefit. There's what is the word? I need to live a life so that I don't do any damage to anybody. And I help in every way that I'm capable of. That's my only principle. I went to a Parsi school. My school was run by a Parsi institution. And whatever I understand of Zoroastrianism is probably the most beautiful philosophical way of looking at the world. Be good, think good, good words, good deeds, good thoughts. That is the crux of that religion. And that's what matters to me. That's the bottom line for me. I feel very sorry for people who are petrified of death. My aunt, who I respect very greatly, my mother's older sister, who I consider a great role model for myself, Shanta Gandhi, she always said, "Maut se darna. Uske baad I am going to be an atom. Wait become an atom." So I say the same thing. I can't wait to become an atom. And now, with the world as it is, I hope the atomization happens quickly. I don't want to continue like this. This is not a happy world to be in.